when you were interviewed by detectives, you made it clear that you took this as a joke, right?
That was my reaction to it, yes.
Because this was the kind of joke that you guys would humor over once or twice a week even, right?
This stood out. It wasn't completely out of character, but it stood out in my mind as unusual.
Okay, but that's not what you told the detective in terms of whether it happened once a week, this type of joke, right?
Yeah.
This type of joke happened once a week, at least, right?
I would say the dark humor, certainly, but not jokes about how to get away with murder.
Okay, we'll cross that bridge.
I have objections and comments, right?
The objection is sustained.
I mean, to be clear, you didn't make any kind of report of any kind of, employment issue relative to that comment, right?
No.
Did you even bring it up to your wife at dinner that night?
I can't recall if I mentioned it that evening or not. I know I mentioned it later, before Charlie Scott went missing, but I don't know precisely when.
Let me ask you this. Do you know how to get away with murder?
I have no specific knowledge of how to get away with the murder, no.
Does your wife, to your knowledge, know how to get away with murder?
No.
Does your wife even do criminal law?
No.
So would it be fair to say that even if Stephen were asking your take on what your wife would advise him on how to get away with murder, it would all be a joke, right?
Here's your objection. It's pure speculation.
The objection is sustained.
Well, I mean, he's calling it speculation, but you know that your wife has no idea how to advise someone to get away with murder, right?
Objection, that's speculation.
The objection is sustained.
And relative to how this statement came out, you know it was a joke because he said it out loud in front of everybody, right?
I don't know what it was.
Objection, I can't. This is speculation whether he knew it was a joke.
The objection is sustained. Now, the question can be rephrased relative to the second phrase of the question, if so desired.
But it ties into his answer as him having taken it as a joke.
That's not how the question was asked, Your Honor. Objection.
Respectfully, the question needs to be rephrased.
If Stephen were remotely serious about this question, would you advise him, step one, make sure that everybody knows and hears that you're plotting to get away with murder? Would that be your advice
Your
to
Honor,
him?
objection, that calls for speculation as well.
What he would advise, Stephen?
If he were remotely serious.
The objection is sustained.
To be sure, your testimony would be that everybody who heard that statement in the bakery that day laughed, right?
Yeah, I'd say we gave it a chuckle.
Well, it was more than a chuckle. I mean, wouldn't your specific answer be that you all kind of laughed even?
Sure, I mean, it wasn't uproarious laughter, it was a small laugh.
And if I'm not mistaken, your actual advice back to him was essentially you should have no connection with the crime.
Yes.
Now, you'd agree with me that under all of the circumstances that you heard that, it simply did not strike you as odd that day.
It stuck out in my memory. That's about as well as I can characterize my feelings about it, other than being seeming.
Okay. But wouldn't it be accurate to say that it simply did not strike you as odd?
No, it would not.
It would not strike you as odd, right?
It did strike me as odd. Not enormously odd, but odd.
Well, that's not what you told the detective when he asked you about whether it was odd, right? I mean, go to page 4 at the top. I mean, even more accurately, this was the kind of joke that you'd almost expect from the workers over at Mana's, right?
Like I said, dark humor wouldn't be unexpected. No.
More accurately, you would almost expect that kind of humor from the people working at Mana. I mean, didn't you tell someone that before, in essence?
Yeah, but there was plenty of dark joking around. Yeah, it's not completely unusual.
Weird, but not unexpectedly weird, almost par for the environment. Wouldn't that be accurate to say?
Yeah.
And bottom line is, no follow-up questions, no follow-up advice. You laughed and you moved on,
Yes.
and it was over in seconds.
Yes.
And the people that you know were present were at least John, I'm sorry, was John there?
No. I don't believe so.
Okay. Was Dave there?
Yes.
And Makela?
Yes.
Okay, I want to talk to you about the interview you had with, well, back on February 21st. Do you recall who you had that interview with?
Detectives Lee and Lou.
Okay, and would it be fair to say that it started off with Detective Lee and then Detective Lou comes in at some point in there?
As I recall, they were both present for the entire interview. But
Okay.
It was a while back.
Okay. And if we're talking about Carly Scott being missing on February 10th or 11th, we're talking about some 10 days later that this interview took place, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me that it would be fair to say that the sole focus of that entire interview was Stephen Capobianco and beefing up evidence that he's guilty?
Judge, objection is argumentative.
I can go over all of the questions that he was
That's
asked.
hearsay, Your Honor.
Hearsay?
Right, well, first of all, as to the objection to the first question that was asked, I will sustain the objection. If we're going to move on to another question, then we'll do that so that the court can evaluate that question.
Okay.
But sustain is the question to which there was an objection.
You'd agree with me that there was absolutely no other subjects discussed in that interview other than Stephen Capobianco.
That's true.
Okay. It wasn't like you were being asked, hey, you have any ideas who may be responsible for Carly Scott's disappearance?
No, they were asking me questions about Steve.
And solely Stephen, right?
Yes.
Okay. And really going so far as to press you to come up with examples, for example, of violent behavior, right?
Judge, objection. This is all hearsay at this point, what he's being asked.
It's not for the truth of the matter asserted. This is for what was asked in the
The
investigation.
objection is overruled. Give me the answer to the question.
Right? I mean, it was questions like, oh, does he ever have violent outbursts at work?
Yeah.
It was questions like, oh, did he ever throw tantrums at work?
Yes.
Even go so far as to ask you questions like, and even though you're telling him, no, he's a peaceful guy, I can't imagine him doing this. The questions to you were still follow-ups like, but yeah, you ever see him get mad at kids touching at his pastries up on the floor? You ever see him get violent with kids?
Judge, objection is to relevance and it is hearsay. It is offered for its truth, whether or not these are asked.
The court will sustain the objection. You may rephrase the question if you wish.
Your Honor, this has nothing to go towards the truth of the matter asserted. It goes towards the questions being asked by the detective.
Then they're irrelevant, Your Honor, because that's their investigation. It's not to ask. There's no impeachment here.
It's relevant because our...
Excuse me, and let me just put one thing in perspective here. I think there were several questions asked in that one question, and you may wish to consider rephrasing it if you wish.
So even though you repeatedly, even though you're repeatedly telling these detectives, hey, he's a peaceful guy, can't see him doing this, they even go so far as to ask you a question of, well, did he ever get mad at kids poking at his pastries up
And Judge,
on the
that
floor?
is argumentative. The form of the question.
This is our defense.
The objection is overruled. You may answer the question.
The subject came up, yes.
And you have to keep insisting to this detective, no, I mean, it's nothing like that, right?
Objection, that's not the testimony. And that's argumentative.
It's hearsay, I'll move on.
The question is withdrawn. You may move.
Now, relative to this injury that you've testified about, be fair to say that you have no evidence to present this jury to dispel Stephen's account of how he got that, right?
No. I only know what he told me.
And even on that injury, you'd agree with me that in the course of your interview, you're describing the injury and the detective keeps telling you, oh, it's kind of like a burn, right?
Yeah, they used the word burn.
And you're telling the detective it's not a burn.
I object because this is hearsay. It's not for impeachment purposes. There's no reason to bring this up.
The objection is sustained. You may ask your next question.
Let me ask you this. Did these look like burn marks to you?
I didn't closely examine them at the time, but I didn't take them for burns when I saw them.
And you told the detectives this, right?
Again, objection. This is hearsay.
It's not for the truth.
Impeachment.
Yeah,
It's not for impeachment.
At this point, it's not for the truth of the matter asserted. It goes towards the detective's responses to his...
Then that
this
is
detail to
completely
it.
irrelevant as to the detective's
It's
responses.
relevant because our defense is a lack of full and fair investigation.
The defense does not
The
make...
court is going to sustain the objection. Let's
Thank you.
move on to the next one.
Now, if I understand your testimony correctly, one point that you make is that when you worked on Saturday with Stephen, you did not see that injury, right?
That's correct.
But wouldn't it be fair to say that even when you saw it on Tuesday, the reason why your attention was drawn to it was because you overheard another worker asking about it?
That's the only reason I know.
That's the only reason you noticed it, right?
Yes.
So for all we know, if you hadn't overheard that, you may not have even seen that injury on Tuesday.
Objection, speculation.
The objection is sustained.
And the point there being that,
Judge, objection is speculation. There's no
well,
point
I'm not
question.
following. I'm not asking the same
All
question.
yes. This is a new question, and I haven't heard it, so I'll have to hear the question first.
The point there is that, I mean, even on Saturday when you worked with him, for all we know, you would not have seen a cut unless you were drawn to it for some particular reason, right?
Same objection as speculation.
The objection is sustained.
Thank you.
Do you have any personal knowledge? Oh, strike that. Okay, and then I just want to touch on your interaction with Stephen when he came to work on that Tuesday morning.
Okay.
Because if I understand you correctly, was he already there first, or were you?
He arrived shortly after I did.
Okay. Now, to be clear, that was right after he spoke with the police, to your knowledge, right?
He said that he'd spoken to the police that morning before coming to work.
Okay. And more accurately, what he informs you is that he might be in trouble, right?
Yeah,
in a missing persons case.
that's what he said.
And based on what he tells you, you know that the only reason he knew that was he was told that by the police that morning, right?
Judge, objection is speculation is being
The
done.
objection is sustained.
Thank you.
Well, this came up in him telling you what the police talked to him about that morning, right?
Yeah, he said, I think I might be the subject of a missing persons investigation or involved in a missing persons investigation because the police were at my house this morning.
So it wasn't like he was saying because I did something. It was because he was told that by the police, right?
I don't know if he said that they told him he was a subject or a person of interest, but he took it to mean that he'd spoken to the police.
No further questions, thank you.
Redirect the
Thank
examination,
you.
Mr. Rivera.
That last question that the criminal defense lawyer just asked you, whether or not the police told him he was a suspect. He didn't tell you the police told him he was a suspect? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he never said the police told me I'm a suspect in an investigation.
That was something he told you he himself is maybe a suspect.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the defense lawyer asked you that day you all left, correct? On Tuesday when the question was posed to you, how to get away with murder.
Yeah.
Did you laugh about that when you found out Carly Scott was missing?
No.
Objection relevance.
Judge, you asked if he
The
left on that
objection
date.
is sustained.
Move to strike any answer.
Granted.
Now, upon question by the defense lawyer, you agree that the defendant was a happy-go-lucky guy generally at work.
Yeah.
Okay. That Tuesday morning, when he reported to work and he told you about the injuries, was he the same happy-go-lucky person?
No.
And do you remember the defense lawyer asking you, well, you didn't bring this to your wife's attention, and you said, no, you did. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. Why did you bring this to your wife's attention? And you mentioned before, okay, my question, why did you bring it to her attention?
I'm going to object. It misstates the testimony. The answer to my question was relative to that very day.
The objection, so if you answer the question.
Okay, can you please tell us, why did you bring this to your wife's attention?
It seemed an incident remarkable enough to bring up. You know.
So you thought it was remarkable?
Not especially, but it came up. It's,
Okay.
like, it's an odd thing happened at work today.
And you testified earlier that he had never asked you a question like that before?
No, nothing like that.
So when you...
object as to that leading question, move to strike the answer.
That's fine, I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
The motion to strike is fine.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Miller, when you were talking about dark humor, asking somebody how to get away with murder, is that part of the everyday dark humor that goes on once or twice a day?
So I'm going to object as to leading and argumentative.
The objection is sustained.
What do you mean by dark humor?
Morbid subjects, certainly. We don't discuss murder plots, as a subject of humor, but yeah, other things.
Other things, when you say other things, do you mean murder plots?
No.
So I'll object as to leading.
Judge, I'm asking if to clarify
The
that.
objection is overruled.
Okay, you can tell us, when you said dark humor, does that involve murder plots?
Objection asked and answered.
Judge, you didn't have a chance to finish answering the question.
The objection is overruled. You may answer the question.
No, we didn't joke about murder plots.
What would be an example of an off-the-wall or dark humor that the defendant would share with you at work?
The objection relevance,
The
403.
objection.
Okay, we don't have to go into that.
Object to the comment?
The objection is sustained.
Here are no further questions. Thank you.
Recross-examination, Mr. Upwell.
Actually, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Are there any juror questions?
Yes, there's one.
Counsel, please approach. I have a question that I'm going to read to you. After I read the question, I will tell you can answer the question. You can face the jurors and answer the question. After you're through answering the question, if you would look back to me, that'll serve as a signal that you're finished answering the question. And then I'll see if the attorneys have any follow-up questions for you. If you would like me to read the question again, please let me know and I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
All right? The question reads as follows. Was the defendant physically or visibly tired that Tuesday, February 11, 2014, morning at work? You may answer the question.
I wouldn't say that he seemed unusually tired at all.
Mr. Rivera, any follow-up questions?
Based on the response, I have no questions.
Mr. Upwell, any follow-up questions?
Not from defense, thank you.
Thank you very much. You are excused. You may call your next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Your Honor, the state will be calling Dave Rasmussen.
Sorry about that. Say Dave Rasmussen.
Dave Rasmussen.
Raise your hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You may proceed with your examination.
He's not your witness. Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Rasmussen.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your full name, please?
David Dale Rasmussen?
And do you reside here in Maui?
Yes, I do.
Upcountry area or downtown?
What country?
Mr. Rasmussen, are you employed?
Yes.
And who are you employed with?
Mana Foods,
Do you work in any particular department or division within Mana Foods?
the bakery department.
First of all, how long have you been with Mana Foods?
About 15 years.
And how long have you been in the bakery department?
The whole 15 years.
Do you hold some type of position in that department at this time?
I'm the bakery manager.
Now, turning your attention back to January, February, and March of 2014, did you have a position with Mana Foods in the bakery department?
Yes, I was bakery manager.
So you've had this position for a while now.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with a person by the name of Ginseng Demilior?
Yes.
And how so?
He's one of my subordinates. He's a bread baker. He's in charge of the bread side.
Are you familiar with a person named Stephen Capobianco?
Yes.
And how are you familiar with that person?
He worked for me as well in the bakery, both sides, so both bread and sweet side.
So there are two sides within the bakery?
Correct.
And can you describe the two sides?
One side is basically just the breads, deal with bread, all different kinds of bread, and the other side is sweets, so it's cakes, cookies, brownies, pastries, stuff like that.
And which side, you said Mr. Miller worked on the bread side, is that
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Now, well, the time that you were working and aware of the defendant or Stephen Capobianco, what side would he work on?
He worked both sides.
Now, if you were to see Stephen Capobianco again, Mr. Rasmussen, would you be able to recognize him?
Yes, sir.
If he's here in this courtroom, could you please point to him and describe an article of his clothing?
He's wearing the suit with the blow-off shirt underneath.
Your Honor, the record should reflect that Mr. Rasmussen has identified the defendant.
The record will so reflect.
Thank you. Now, do you recall when or the years you would have worked with the defendant?
Yes, I worked with him roughly 5 years on and off, and it completed in what was it, 2015, the beginning of 2015.
Were you working with the defendant during the period of January and February of 2014?
Yes.
And again, this is, pardon me?
I'm sorry, it finished 2014.
All right. You said 15, though, so is that incorrect?
That's incorrect, yes. 14 is.
Did you get to know the defendant?
Yes.
And do you recall your typical days off back during that time period of February 2014?
I had Sunday, Monday off.
Were you in charge of the schedule back then?
Yes.
So being in charge of the schedule, who would you be the one that would, I guess, set the days off for the employees within the bakery
Yep, correct.
department?
Yes.
Do you recall when the defendant's days off would have been during that time
It
period?
would have been, I believe it was Wednesday, Thursday. I remember.
Do you recall the defendant working on weekends during that time
Yes.
period?
Yes.
But again, you said you were off Sunday, Monday?
Sunday, Monday, yes.
Now, let me turn your attention, after you've been off on Sunday, Monday, turn your attention to a Tuesday of February 11th, 2014. Were you working that day?
Yes.
And do you recognize that day as being a Tuesday?
Yes.
Do you recall if the defendant was working that day?
Yes, he was.
And was it, again, within the bread department?
Yeah. In the
Now, which side, if you know, which side was the defendant working on, the sweets or the
sweet
baking?
side, yes. He was
And you,
right alongside next to me. Yes.
now, could you describe, if you can, whether or not the defendant was acting the same like he acts on any other day or differently?
No, he was not acting the same.
Yeah, can you please describe that for us?
He was a slight bit jittery. He had been visited by police, so he was a little jittery that day.
Now, how did you know he had been visited by police?
The first thing in the morning, he had told me. First thing when I got.
He told you that?
Yes.
Did he share any more information with respect to being visited by the police?
Yes. It was then that he revealed to me that he had that his ex-girlfriend, who was also a previous friend of mine, had been missing, and the police had questioned him about that. And then he also revealed to me that she was pregnant with this child.
And now, when you said this person that was, did you say an ex-employee and a friend of yours?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Who was this person?
This would who we call Charlie Scott.
Does she also go by the name of Carly?
Yes.
Now, you said she used to work at Mono Foods as well,
Yes.
and you considered her a friend.
Yeah.
Did you, before he told you that she was pregnant, did you already know that?
No.
Did he mention who the father of the baby was?
Yes. He said it was himself.
Was that also the first time that you learned that?
Yes.
Now, how, with respect to the defendant's work performance on that day, could you please describe that for us?
He was very distracted. Made if I remember, a few mistakes, and was not very present. His mind was not very present.
When you say his mind was not very present, can you tell us what you mean by that?
Well, most talking that day was talking about the Charlie being missing, and how he felt, and how he just was not very focused. He was thinking about outside of work.
And when you say mistakes, do you recall what, if any, mistakes were made at work?
All I remember is mistakes with the ratio of pies he was making. That's all I remember offhand, but I remember kind of watching him closely, because not necessarily like mistakes, but the finished product wasn't as careful, it wasn't as beautiful as I liked. So,
I'm sorry, it wasn't as beautiful?
yeah, the finished product wasn't as beautiful as I liked.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, are you sort of like in charge of the quality control?
Yes. Yes.
Had you ever noticed or observed these types of mistakes before this from the defendant?
Occasionally, but not so much in the same day.
So what did you do when you observed these mistakes? Did you have to take any action?
I let him know when the mistakes happened, and then made sure that he tried to focus and finish his job properly.
At that day, do you know if he stayed at work the entire day, or did he leave early?
He left a little early, but he wanted to leave earlier. I asked him to finish, a few things that he wanted to, have me finish.
So he requested to leave earlier, and you
Yes.
had him stay and
I had him
finish?
stay to finish the project, the tasks that he had left, yes.
And did he tell you why he had wanted to leave early?
He said he wanted to go help look for Charlie.
Did he express any concern for her welfare to you?
No.
How about for when he told you he was the father of her child, did he express any concern about the child?
I'll object as to relevance at 403.
On those grounds, the objection is overruled.
Okay, so you may answer that question.
No,
No.
object as to argumentative?
On those ones, you respectfully the objection to social vote.
Can you please answer the question?
No, I didn't see any concern. No.
So object is lack of foundation?
The objection is overruled.
Prior to learning that Carly Scott had been missing, were you present at work when defendant posed a question that caught, I guess, people in the bakery's attention? And this had been 2-3 weeks before Carly Scott went missing.
Yes.
And what question was that?
He asked how to get away with murder.
And did he ask you that question?
No.
Who did he ask that question to?
Ginseng Miller.
Again, how did you know he asked it to Ginseng Miller?
I was right next to Stephen, and he actually said ginseng, getting his attention. It was across the bakery before he asked the question.
And if you know this, was it unusual or usual for him to ask Ginseng questions? If you know this.
Yeah, it was usual. Yeah.
How did you react, or how did you take it when you heard that question being asked?
I was rather shocked. I also made it a point to kind of mention how strange of a question that was after.
To your knowledge, had you ever heard the defendant ask that type of question before?
No.
Now, Mr. Rasmussen, do you surf?
Yes.
Are you familiar with any surf spots, I guess past Kenai or within the Kenai area?
Yeah.
And what surf spots are you familiar with there? Meaning that you've been there.
Yeah, I surfed Honolulu quite regularly for a while. Honolulu Bay.
Honolulu.
Yeah.
Now, is Honolulu Bay, is that before Kenai or after Kenai?
It's before Kenai.
Now, are you aware of any other bays within that area?
Yes, the next bay is a bay that people call Parklots.
Okay. Does it have a Hawaiian name that you're aware of?
Yes, well, I'm not remembering the name right now.
Have you ever heard of the name Nua Ailua?
Object
Nua
as to
Ailua.
leading?
That's correct.
You know, I'm asking if he's ever heard of that bay before.
The objection is sustained.
You mentioned Paraquats Bay.
Yes.
Okay. Does it have another name?
Yes.
And what is the other name?
Nua Ailua.
And you know that?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to that bay?
I've never been into the bay. No. I drive it quite frequently.
When you say you drive it, what do you mean by that?
I drive on a highway, but I've never been down into it's a 4-wheel drive road that goes down there. I've never been down there.
You would need a truck or a 4-wheel drive to get down there?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
I'm sorry, you said you've never been there though.
Yeah.
Now,
So I'd object as speculative then if
The
you
objection is sustained.
move to strike any answer.
The motion to strike is granted.
let me ask you this. Have you passed that entrance to that area that you described as Paraquats Bay?
Yes.
So you've physically seen that, the
Yes.
entrance?
Yes.
Now, was there a time when you provided information to the defendant regarding that bay?
Yes.
When did that happen?
It was about 2 months prior to Charlie being missing.
And with respect to that bay, do you know if the defendant ever went there?
Yes, he did.
And how do you know that?
He told me.
And when did he tell you this?
It was within 2 weeks after I had told him about the bay and spoke with him about the bay.
So let me just make sure I'm not confused there. You said you told him about the bay 2 months before Charlie went missing.
Correct.
And he went to that bay within 2 weeks of you telling him?
Yep. Correct.
And you know that because?
he told me during a shift at work, he said, "Oh, you know that bay? I went there."
Did he say anything about the bay?
He said it was beautiful. Yeah.
And did he ever, do you know if he ever went to that bay a second time?
Yes, he did.
And how do you know that?
He told me again. Yeah.
And when would this have been?
Maybe a week or two after that first time he went to there.
And was this before Charlie went missing then?
Yes.
And what, if anything, did he mention about the bay this second time he went there?
He said that he got his truck stuck in the mud and he had to dig it out.
Did he mention anything else about digging the truck out?
A couple times through that shift the day after, he worked with me the day after. A couple of times through the day, he mentioned that he was very sore from digging the truck out.
Did he mention what part of him was sore?
No,
Not like a back, a leg, or an arm?
no, just said that he was very sore.
Okay. Ms. Rasmussen, is there a reason why you only drove past the bay and you didn't actually drive down the Paraquats or Nuainua Bay?
Couple reasons. One was because I didn't have four-wheel drive truck. I had a Jetta at the time, and it was
Is that Volkswagen Jetta?
yeah,
And that wouldn't have made it down
yeah,
there?
I wouldn't have made it down there from my understanding, from what people told me.
Okay. Are you familiar with the type of truck that the defendant or vehicle the defendant would have been driving during that time period of January and February of 2014?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
I've seen it before many times.
If I were to show you a photograph of that, do you think you'd be able to recognize that?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's already in evidence as exhibits 30, state's exhibits 35, 36, and 38. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may do so.
Yeah, I'm going to have you look at exhibits 35, 36, and 38. And I'm going to ask if you recognize it. You're looking first at exhibit 35. You know, may I publish this since it's already in evidence?
You may do so.
You're looking at exhibit 35. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And how do you recognize it?
That's Steven's truck that he was driving.
Are you aware of whether or not he had purchased new tires for that truck?
No, I'm not aware.
Okay, now turn your attention to exhibit 36. And you recognize that photograph?
Yes. See the truck. Yep.
36. Okay, that's the same truck you said?
Yeah.
Okay, now looking at photograph number 38. And do you recognize that?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the same truck, but on the other side?
Yes.
Now, is this a truck, where would you see this truck most often?
When I saw it, it would be at Mana Foods in the gravel lot and in Paia in the gravel parking lot. When I come to work, it was...
Okay, you can see that. I'm sorry, what did you say?
When I came into work, I would see it in the back.
And I'm going to show you one more exhibit. This is State's Exhibit 1 that's already in evidence as well. Your Honor, may I approach again?
You may do so.
Okay, I'm going to show you what has been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 1. Gentlemen, I publish this since it's in the
You may
news.
do so.
Do you recognize State's Exhibit 1?
Yes,
And what is that? Who's that a photograph of?
that's Charlie.
Does it accurately depict her when you knew her, I guess, at the time at Mono Foods and after?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. You can take that. You're not go for the questions at this time. Thank you.
We will take a recess at this time. Thank you.
What is the recess?
Try to get the computer on there. He's gonna put you so we'll take a break for 10 minutes and then 10 minutes and restart everything.